Hi, welcome to Negotiate Value Lesson 11. We're at the beginning of a new module here, which is all about options. Identifying your options and developing your options. That's what we're going to be talking about in the next few lessons. And this is critical because your options are what gives you strength in a negotiation. And the skill of identifying and developing options is one of the two strategic skills in negotiating and buying that gives you long-term success. Now, the reason we don't call this module simply developing your options is because we want a reminder that options are not just about the price and bringing that price as low as you can if you're buying or as high as you can if you're selling. The reason we want to develop more options to push the potential is to increase the benefit in the transaction. This creates more surplus, and that means there's more to go around between the buyer and the seller. Now, where does this added surplus come from? How do you raise the benefit? Well, often it's through innovation. This is a subject which isn't covered very much in negotiation training, yet it's critical if you really want to get the most out of when you buy or when you negotiate. So let's get into that a little bit more. Now, I want to ask you, do you have a research and development budget at your company? Well, maybe you do and maybe you're not. Maybe you don't. It depends upon your industry. But I'll assert this, even if you're a high-tech company, even if you're someone who's pouring a lot into new products and bringing them to the marketplace, I bet that you innovate more by what you buy than by what you build. I bet that you get more from the marketplace than you actually invent yourself, because every occasion when we buy is a time where we can innovate. We can bring in new technology and new ways of doing things. And this is a time in our history where there's more opportunity than ever before to capture innovation that's in the marketplace, because there's so much that's going on in that way. So let's talk about that briefly. And I'm just going to touch on these. I think we know about technology that's happening in the marketplace. We know about automation and things that used to be done in a manual fashion are now done by software or machines or robots in a very efficient way. At the same time, we have more specialization than ever before. A company can reach customers all over the globe, and so that gives them the ability to specialize on a very narrow function or on a very narrow customer segment. And that means that they go deeper and stronger in that one ability instead of going broader. A couple of other forces, labor is at lower cost throughout the world, and we know of many companies that take advantage of this. They have low-cost labor around the world to bring their costs down for things that are not automated. And at the same time, so much information has become free. So all these things work together, meaning that innovation is not just for high tech. Innovation is happening really in every field, and there are lots of examples of this. So how do you get access to this? And I want to give you an example first of how I did this in a field what you might think is kind of low tech, and that is phone bills. So here's a phone bill. My life used to be reading these phone bills. I looked at thousands of them every month because I, with my partners, ran a company that did phone bill processing, auditing, and payment for large Fortune 500 companies. So we had some of the best known brands in the world: Harley-Davidson, Kimberly-Clark, Fannie Mae, Saks Fifth Avenue. These were our customers. And of course, these companies had huge amounts of resources, but they weren't focused like we were on reading phone bills and paying phone bills. So we bought a point solution to them that helped them do something they had to do, but in a much better way. And that's an example of capturing innovation. There are really two ways to capture innovation that are meaningful to you as a company or as a customer. We can raise the benefit, bring that benefit higher, or we can bring the cost lower. Now, does that sound a little bit familiar to you? Well, if you're paying attention at all, that's familiar because you remember the bar chart, right? And these are the ways that we create and increase value, either by increasing the benefit or by lowering the cost. So it's no surprise that that's also how innovation becomes material and meaningful to us as either consumers or as companies when we are buying in the marketplace. So how do you get at that innovation? And I want to give you two great tools to access innovation. If you're on the seller side, these are great things to answer for what you're providing. And if you're on the buyer side, they're great questions to ask of your vendor. And I might suggest that you ask an existing vendor this question this week. This is a great one. How can we spend 20% more in this area and triple the results? How can we spend 20% more and triple the results? This is a magic question. Now, I want to point out that part of the reason you're able to ask this question is because we've gone through the course and developed the tools and the foundation. And you'll remember 2 lessons ago, we did the benefit bridge. In that lesson, we connected the features through the benefits to the goals that we were after, and we also defined the metrics. How do we measure success? What are those numbers that show us that we're making progress? Now, because we have those numbers, we know how to measure results and how to see if they are triple. So I'm not suggesting that in every case you can increase spending by 20% and triple the results. That's certainly not true. Although if you look over what's happened in recent years in a lot of different fields, that has been true. The point of this, and this is the second point, is to engage your vendor and to push them to think about, well, what are the best practices? How is innovation happening in this field? And how do I get more return for my investment? So this is the magic question to ask, how to raise that benefit. Now, the second magic question is related to the cost, and this one might be a little bit more obvious to you, but it's simply, how does this purchase make other expenses unnecessary? Now, a lot of you are competing in areas where you're positioned as a premium provider. You're not the low-cost provider. Yet we know in business that everything comes back to cost. So this is a great question to be able to answer if you're on the selling side of the table, because although you're a premium, you're not a premium because it's a whim or because there's no good reason. Because you're a premium provider, your service, your product can make other expenses unnecessary. And you may need to draw that out and define that for the person on the buying side of the table. Now, on the other side, when you're buying yourself, you need to think of, well, how does this purchase make other purchases unnecessary? How does it actually lower my cost? Because innovation is either doing one of those two things. It's increasing your benefit or lowering your costs. Now that brings us to the homework. And in the homework assignment, we're going to look at a couple of examples of innovation and then basically ask those two questions. How is it raising the benefit and how is it lowering the cost? We may go at it from those two magic questions. How would spending a little bit more triple my benefit, triple the results, and how would this make other expenses unnecessary? So what I want you to think about is areas of innovation that you are not currently taking advantage of. Okay, so there's something out there, and I'm going to give a few examples. So let's think about ebooks. I don't know if you get ebooks and you read them on an e-reader, but that's something that obviously a lot of people are doing now. Streaming videos via the internet. These are a couple of personal ones. Or Bluetooth phone integration with your car. You might be a gadget person, you might have all these and more, but there's something out there personally on the innovation side that you're probably not yet taking advantage of. So consider that. And then on the professional side at work, there's tons of innovation. I just listed a few things you could choose from. Cloud-based software instead of installed software, that's a major trend. Outsourced bookkeeping, or there are a lot of other outsourced things. Outsourced HR management, outsourced accounting, lots of other areas that you could outsource, and think about that. That's not necessarily high tech, but it's a different solution, and in many areas that wasn't really available or not widely available even 5 or 10 years ago. And then the third one I have here is crowdsourced graphic design. I don't know if you've ever done this, but you can pay a graphic designer to work with them, pay them a high hourly rate, or you can put your specifications out and you have a contest and have lots of people compete for that. So that's just a different solution, a different innovative solution. What we want to do with these three solutions is take a look at, we'll take two, one personal, one professional, and then say, well, how would that increase the benefit and how would that lower cost? So I'll show you the ones I'm working on here. Let's take a look. The first one that I'm not taking advantage of is streaming video rental. Okay, so that's when I'm home, and I don't do that, so let's think about how that could increase my benefit. And I think there could be thousands of extra titles that I don't have access to now that I can have instantly. And I guess instantly, that might be a second increased benefit, because right now I have to wait for the videos to come in the mail. And that's really my cost, right? If I think about lower cost, that would be the cost of waiting for the videos to come. So that's a quick example of how this innovative solution, streaming video rental, can bring my benefit higher and my cost lower. Now let's think about another one at work. Let's think about a virtual assistant. How could that bring my benefit higher? Well, it could mean I could get more expertise in a narrow area, because it might be something that I just need a few hours a month, and so I wouldn't have access to hire somebody full time, but I got access to that person for just a few hours a month by a virtual assistant. And then lower costs, well, it could be lower costs because I could only pay for part-time hours instead of full-time hours. And it could be lower wages as well, because as we alluded to earlier, if I'm paying somebody that's in a different country or a different area where the wages are lower, I can have access to them, and that could be someplace that I lower the cost. So in this exercise now, it's not important to get something that you're using or might even use. The key here is to exercise our muscle of looking at innovation and analyzing that greater benefit and that lower cost. So that's how you approach the homework. Now, as a bonus, call up a vendor. Call up a vendor and ask them those two magic questions. Say, hey, how can we spend a little bit more with you and triple our results? Or is there some way that spending money with you now could reduce our need to spend money in another area? That's a great conversation to have with almost any of your vendors, especially if it's an area that where costs have kind of risen and you feel like it's a little bit out of control, or you feel like maybe you could do better. Great conversation to have. I promise you'll get results from a few minutes on the phone. If you find innovation in an area that surprises you, maybe an old school area or an old world technology, I'd love to hear about it, because I'm always collecting these ways where old ways of doing things are being replaced by new things, where innovation is creeping in areas where we don't necessarily expect it, in the low-tech world especially. So I'd love to hear about that, and do your homework. I'll see you in Lesson 12.